Hello, everybody. It's finally time for the third. Number three, baby. Number three. Third conditional. We've already talked about the first conditional. We've talked about the second conditional. So now, of course, we have to get to our final conditional, the third conditional. So for the third conditional, I like to think about traveling back through time. We can imagine a different past. Now, I know in your language, maybe this is more difficult to express, but English, we have this grammar, the third conditional, to imagine if the past had been different. So, for example, this is my true story. And when it's a true story, we're going to use the past simple. Past simple, I grew up in the USA. I learned English and I read English books at school. Of course, that's me. This is a true story. I'm American, so I grew up in the USA, I learned English, and I read English books at school. But what if I imagine that my life had been different? If I had grown up in China. I didn't grow up in China. I didn't grow up in China. But if I had grown up in China, if I had grown up in China, I would have learned Chinese. I didn't learn Chinese. I did not learn Chinese. I don't know Chinese. But if I had grown up in China, I would have. I would have learned Chinese. And of course, if I'd grown up in China, I would have read Chinese. I would have read Chinese at school. That would have been part of my life, right? If I had grown up in China. Okay, how would my life have been different if I had grown up in your country? I'm very curious, guys. Please comment below. Let me know. What would my life have been like if I had grown up in Turkey, if I had grown up in Istanbul, if I had grown up in Mexico, if I had grown up in Brazil or Cuba, if I had grown up in Russia or Japan or Korea? What would my life have been like? Okay? Think about that for your comments below. Okay? If I had grown up in, I would have blank. What would I have learned? What would I have done? What would I have studied at school? What would have been my favorite movie? I'm really curious what you guys think my life would have been like if I had grown up in your country. Okay, so for all of you, I know if this is new grammar, we have to make sure we study the English grammar pattern as well, of course. So the grammar pattern to make these sentences is to use the if plus your subject, I, Mark, he, she, we, they, I plus, or if plus subject, plus had, and then our past participle, which I call the PP. Past participle PP. After we use if I had past participle, we're going to use would, have, and then again we're going to use the past participle. So let me show you what I mean. If I had grown up in China, I would have learned Chinese. If I had, then grow, we changed the word grow to grown. That's our PP. If I had grown up in China, I would have learned. I would have learned Chinese. Learned is the past participle, the PP word for, right, learn. Learn, learned, learned. Okay, I would have learned Chinese. If I had stayed in America. I don't live in America now. I live in Singapore now. If I had stayed in America, I wouldn't have become a teacher. I wouldn't have become a teacher. I would have gotten a different job. I think I would have gotten a job if I had stayed in America, but I didn't stay. I moved to Singapore with my lovely wife. If I had overslept this morning, I would have missed the meeting. We had a school meeting this morning, and I didn't miss it. I was on time. I came to the meeting, But if I had overslept, my boss would have killed me. And I would have been in trouble. I would have missed the meeting. So, same pattern. Had PP, would have PP for our third conditional. All right. We can also make questions, of course. Questions, I like to use this pattern. I say, what would you have if you had Okay, we're talking about that imagined past. Something from the past that didn't happen, but we're imagining something different. What would you have done if you hadn't moved to Singapore? Good question, guys. If I hadn't moved to Singapore, I would have gotten a job in America. What would you have done if you hadn't gotten the job you wanted? Or this one, what would you have done if you hadn't gone to university? I went to university. Did you go to university? What would you have done if you hadn't decided to go to university? If you hadn't gone to university, what would you have done? Okay. Yeah, for me, I would have stayed in America. I would have gotten a different job. I would have gone on holiday. Maybe if I hadn't gotten this job, if I hadn't become a teacher here at ULC, I would have gone on holiday. I would have enjoyed time in America. All these things I could have done, I would have done, if my life had been different. Okay, so that's it, guys. That's all of our third conditional. So I'm really curious, again, to hear what you have to say using the third conditional in the comments below. And one more, right? I asked you about what it's like to grow up in your country. If I had grown up in your country, what would it have been like? What would I have done? I'm also curious, what do you think? If you had grown up in the USA, what would you have studied at school? Or how would your life have been different if you had grown up in the USA? Please let me know in the comments. But that's it for now. So I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a wonderful week.